What would you do if you saw an elderly veteran sitting alone in a military mess hall, looking confused and out of place? That's exactly what happened one morning when a young Marine noticed the veteran struggling to navigate the bustling environment. Without hesitation, the Marine stepped forward, but not everyone in the room welcomed the act. The tension was immediate, eyes watching, whispers spreading. And then, something unexpected happened. The Marine's simple gesture of respect and courage not only changed the course of the veteran's day, but also caught the attention of the general overseeing the hall. This story is about more than a push or a confrontation. It's about honor, compassion, and the surprising ways heroism reveals itself when you least expect it. Stay tuned as we dive into this unforgettable moment that left a room full of soldiers stunned. The mess hall was unusually crowded that morning. The scent of freshly cooked eggs and bacon mixed with the faint metallic tang of the military facility. Young Marines, fresh from drills, moved briskly, trays in hand, eyes focused on their routines. Conversation buzzed around the room. Discussions about upcoming exercises, complaints about the early wake-up call, laughter that echoed off the high ceilings. At first glance, everything appeared normal. But there was something, or rather someone, that stood out. At the far end of the hall sat an elderly man, hunched slightly in a worn-down blue jacket, staring at the cafeteria trays with a distant, almost confused expression. He didn't belong here, that much was obvious. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his tray, and a few Marines noticed him and whispered among themselves. "Who let him in here?" one murmured. "Not our old-timer," another responded with a smirk. The Marine who noticed him first, Corporal James Harper, paused mid-step. Something in the veteran's eyes, a mix of pride, confusion, and quiet resilience, compelled him to act. He approached the table cautiously, mindful of the other Marines who were watching. "Sir," Harper said politely, extending a steady hand. "Can I help you?" The veteran looked up, startled at the attention. For a moment, silence fell over the corner of the hall. Every eye seemed to follow the interaction, sensing that something important was unfolding. I'm supposed to be here," the old man said slowly, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. "I used to eat here years ago." Harper nodded, understanding more than the words conveyed. He placed a reassuring hand on the veteran's shoulder, guiding him gently toward a quieter section of the mess hall. This simple gesture sparked a flurry of reactions. Some young Marines frowned, seeing it as a disruption. Others whispered in admiration, recognizing the respect and courage it took to approach a stranger in such a charged environment. Yet, the most important observers were still unaware. The general overseeing the hall, moving along his inspection route, had his sharp eyes on the unfolding scene. "Young man," the general barked, stepping closer. "What's going on here?" Harper didn't flinch. He straightened, meeting the general's gaze without hesitation. "Sir, this veteran seems lost. I'm just helping him find his way." The general's expression hardened. A mess hall was not a place for distractions, and discipline was the first priority. Yet, as he observed the veteran, the old man's posture straightened subtly, a glimmer of dignity returning to his stance. "You think you can just push people around?" One of the younger Marines whispered under his breath, referring to Harper's firm but respectful hand on the veteran's shoulder. Harper ignored it. His mission was clear. This man deserved respect, and the Marines around them needed a lesson in humility. Slowly, he guided the veteran to an empty table near the center of the hall. As the veteran sat, he looked around at the bustling young faces. Memories flickered in his eyes. The camaraderie, the discipline, the laughter, echoes of a life spent serving his country. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The general, standing a few feet away, observed silently, noting the courage it took for this young Marine to defy casual judgment and do what was right. Harper retrieved the veteran's tray, helping him navigate the cafeteria line, pointing out the food options and ensuring he had everything he needed. The veteran's hands shook slightly, but he managed to smile, nodding his thanks. By now, the whispers had grown louder. "Look at him," one Marine said, "standing up for an old guy like that." "Yeah, but what about orders?" another replied. The general finally stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Corporal Harper," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Explain your actions." Harper kept his tone respectful but firm. "Sir, I saw a man who served our country being overlooked. I couldn't ignore it. I guided him here so he could have a meal with dignity." The hall went quiet. Every Marine's eyes were on the general, waiting for a reaction. And then a surprising turn. The general's stern expression softened. His eyes, trained to detect discipline and courage in equal measure, recognized the integrity behind Harper's actions. "Very well," he said slowly. "You've shown judgment, respect, and courage. Let this be an example to all of you." A ripple of realization spread through the hall. The young Marines, who had initially judged Harper's actions as improper, now understood. True valor wasn't about following every minor rule blindly. It was about doing what was right, even when it drew attention, even when it went against the grain. The veteran, seated now with a full tray of food, looked around at the young faces. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, respected, and honored. His eyes met Harper's, and in that silent glance, gratitude and mutual respect passed between them. The general's presence lingered, a silent testament to the lessons learned that morning. Courage, honor, and respect. These were not just words. They were actions, visible to anyone willing to notice. And in the mess hall that day, among the trays, chatter, and fleeting judgments, a moment of true human connection unfolded, one that would be remembered by all who witnessed it. The veteran's presence in the mess hall was no longer a point of confusion. It had become a focal point. Every Marine who had initially watched from a distance now found their attention drawn not just by curiosity, but by respect. Conversations had slowed, and the clatter of trays and silverware seemed muted in comparison to the unspoken tension that filled the room. Corporal Harper remained by the veteran's side, his posture relaxed but alert. Every now and then, he would lean in, speaking softly, offering guidance or reassurance. "Try the eggs, sir. They're made fresh," he said, pointing to a steaming tray. The veteran chuckled lightly, a sound that carried decades of experience, hardship, and endurance. "You remind me of someone I served with," Harper admitted, his tone low, almost confessional. The veteran looked at him, curiosity piqued. There was a moment, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, that passed in silence between the two. Time seemed irrelevant here. It was as if past and present had collided in this small corner of the mess hall. Meanwhile, the general observed from a distance, arms crossed. He had seen thousands of interactions in his career, moments of discipline, insubordination, bravery, and folly. Yet there was something about this scene that struck him differently. It wasn't just about following orders, it was about the humanity behind them. The courage it took for a young Marine to step forward and act with empathy, in a place where order and rules usually reign supreme, was not lost on him. Around the hall, other Marines began to change their posture. Some shuffled uncomfortably, realizing that their initial whispers and judgmental stares had been premature, even shameful. A few of the younger recruits leaned toward each other, whispering in awe. "Did you see how Harper handled that?" One murmured. "Yeah, calm, respectful. He didn't hesitate," another replied. Even the cafeteria staff had paused in their work, silently watching the exchange unfold. Food trays were set down with more care. Movements slowed as the energy in the room shifted. The mess hall, a place of routine, order, and discipline, had become a stage for something entirely unexpected, a lesson in honor. The veteran, for his part, seemed to absorb every detail. His eyes roamed over the young Marines, noting their disciplined stances, their energy, their eagerness to serve. Yet he noticed the imperfections too, the impatience, the curiosity, the judgment. It reminded him of a time long ago when he, too, had been that young Marine navigating the complex world of military hierarchy while trying to maintain integrity. "I never thought I'd see it like this again," he muttered softly, almost to himself. Harper leaned closer, offering a supportive smile. "Sir, your generation Sometimes you forget what honor looks like, the veteran continued. But you remember it. This was not lost on the other Marines. A subtle, almost imperceptible respect began to ripple through the room. Actions spoke louder than words, and Harper's unwavering support for the veteran had demonstrated a standard of conduct that transcended the rules of the mess hall. The general, now stepping closer, cleared his throat. The sound was subtle, but it carried the weight of authority. Every eye in the room turned instinctively. Harper straightened immediately, attentive and respectful. The veteran, sensing the attention, paused mid-bite, looking up. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Corporal Harper," the general began, his tone firm but tinged with an unusual softness. "You've shown what I like to see in this corps: courage, initiative, and respect. Not just for orders, not just for discipline, but for the men and women who've walked these halls long before us. Actions like yours, they set the standard." A murmur ran through the room. Young Marines exchanged glances, the realization settling in. The general's words were more than praise. They were a lesson. Observing Harper's interaction, they were learning something far more significant than any drill or protocol. They were witnessing the essence of leadership, empathy, and moral courage in action. The veteran, seated at his table, looked directly at the general. There was a quiet dignity in his expression, one that had been weathered by years of service, sacrifice, and survival. "Sir," he said softly, "you honor my service just by allowing me to be here today." The general nodded solemnly. "It is the least we can do for those who came before us. And it is your presence and actions like Corporal Harper's that remind us all why we serve." Harper, feeling the weight of the moment, didn't speak. Words seemed inadequate. Instead, he offered a firm nod, a gesture of understanding and acknowledgement. The veteran returned the nod, a bridge of silent communication spanning generations. Around them, other Marines began to grasp the lesson. Respect was not merely about protocol, it was about recognizing value, experience, and courage wherever it appeared, even in those who had long been retired or forgotten. One recruit, barely out of boot camp, whispered to a buddy, "I think I just understood what it means to really serve." The veteran, for his part, slowly began to eat, savoring each bite as if the food itself carried meaning beyond nutrition. The room, though bustling with activity, had transformed into a shared space of reflection, humility, and renewed purpose. As the meal progressed, Harper continued to assist subtly, offering water, adjusting the veteran's tray, and even sharing small anecdotes to make the moment lighter. He ensured that the veteran's experience was dignified and comfortable. And in doing so, he inspired everyone who watched. Lessons in leadership, courage, and compassion flowing silently through action rather than words. Eventually, the general approached the veteran directly. "It's good to see you here," he said. "Your service is remembered, your contributions valued." The veteran looked up, meeting the general's eyes. There was gratitude, pride, and a quiet satisfaction there, a reflection of a life spent serving a nation, now honored in a moment of simplicity yet profound significance. "Thank you, sir," the veteran replied, his voice firm despite his age. "And thank you for allowing young Marines like Harper to remind us all what courage really looks like." The general nodded once, firmly. "This is the standard I expect," he said, addressing the room as much as Harper or the veteran. "Look to your peers, look to those who came before you, and remember, respect and honor are earned in actions, not just words." Today, you've seen in motion. A hush fell over the room. Even the clatter of trays and chatter had quieted, replaced by a collective awareness. In that moment, the mess hall had become more than a place for food and routine. It had become a classroom, a stage, and a testament to values that transcended time. As the veteran finished his meal, he stood slowly, supported lightly by Harper. Eyes turned, whispers ceased, and the room seemed to acknowledge a silent truth. Heroism often appears in small, unassuming moments. It is not always in battlefields or grand displays, but in the simple acts of courage, respect, and human kindness. And as the veteran departed the mess hall, Harper watched him go, understanding that this day would stay with him and with everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. The lessons learned here, in a simple mess hall, would ripple through the Corps, quietly shaping behavior, inspiring courage, and reminding every Marine of the honor they are sworn to uphold. The hall returned to its usual rhythm, but the impact of what had just occurred lingered, invisible but undeniable. Young Marines walked taller, eyes a little sharper, hearts a little braver. And somewhere in the distance, a general's quiet smile confirmed what they all now understood. Respect, integrity, and courage are timeless, and they can emerge in the most unexpected moments. The veterans' departure from the mess hall was a slow, deliberate procession. Each step seemed weighted with decades of experience, sacrifice, and unspoken stories. Yet, the presence of Corporal Harper walking beside him, offering subtle guidance and support, gave him reassurance. The younger Marines watched in silence, realizing that what they had witnessed was far more than a simple act of kindness. It was a demonstration of the essence of military honor. As they approached the exit, the general followed, his posture rigid, but his gaze softened. He had seen countless displays of courage and discipline, but rarely had he observed a moment that combined respect, empathy, and initiative so perfectly. He understood that Harper's actions would resonate far beyond the walls of this mess hall. They would set a standard for every Marine who witnessed them. "Sir," Harper said, voice low and respectful, "it's been an honor assisting you today. I hope I've made this experience easier for you." The veteran smiled faintly, his eyes glistening with emotion. "You've done more than that, young man," he replied. "You've reminded me of what service truly means. And you've reminded them all as well." He gestured subtly toward the mess hall behind them, where Marines had resumed their routines, but with a noticeably changed demeanor. As they stepped outside, the cold morning air bit at their faces. The veteran paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, absorbing the stillness. In the distance, the hum of helicopters, the shuffle of boots, and the occasional barked order echoed through the base. Life here moved at an unrelenting pace, yet in this moment it seemed suspended, a brief pause, a breath between chaos and duty. "You've earned their respect," the veteran continued. "Not because of rank, not because of orders, but because you acted with honor. Remember this always. Actions define character, not titles." Harper nodded, humbled by the words. "Thank you, sir. I'll remember." The general, standing a few paces behind, finally spoke. "Corporal Harper," he said, his tone firm yet measured, "you have set an example that will not be forgotten. I expect you to continue leading by example, not just in this mess hall, but in every aspect of your service. Today, you demonstrated leadership that goes beyond rank, beyond protocol. Leadership rooted in respect, empathy, and courage." Harper straightened instinctively, his chest swelling with a sense of pride tempered by humility. The veteran's presence beside him reinforced the weight of the moment. It wasn't accolades or recognition he sought. It was the understanding that what he had done mattered, that it resonated with those around him, shaping their perception of honor and service. As they walked toward the veteran's temporary quarters on base, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Harper asked about his service, about the conflicts he had experienced, and the lessons he had learned over a lifetime of military duty. The veteran, in turn, shared stories that ranged from moments of intense combat to quieter, reflective periods, painting a picture of resilience, strategy, and sacrifice that few outside the military could comprehend. "Young Marines today," the veteran said, "often forget the importance of patience and observation. You see, courage isn't just about charging into danger. It's about understanding when to act, when to step in, and when to guide others with respect. What you did in that mess hall wasn't a mere gesture. It was a lesson in true leadership." Harper absorbed every word, realizing the depth of the insight being offered. Leadership was more than giving orders. It was about fostering trust, demonstrating empathy, and setting a standard that others would follow without question. Today, he had done more than assist a veteran. He had lived the principles he had been trained to uphold, and he had inspired others to do the same. Meanwhile, Back in the mess hall, the ripple effect of Harper's actions became evident. Marines who had initially been skeptical now approached one another, discussing the importance of respect and discipline. A senior sergeant pulled aside a group of new recruits, recounting the incident and emphasizing the value of empathy alongside obedience. Even minor infractions were now viewed through a different lens, as young soldiers internalized the lesson that actions rooted in respect and courage carried far more weight than mere rule following. By midday, the veteran had settled into his quarters, and Harper returned to his duties. Yet, the memory of the morning's events lingered in every corner of the base. The general, now seated in his office, reflected on the unexpected impact of a single act of compassion. Orders were important, discipline was necessary, but the ability to recognize and honor humanity within the military framework was equally vital. Harper had demonstrated this, quietly shaping the culture of the base with his actions. As the day progressed, reports of Harper's conduct began to circulate beyond the mess hall. Officers at various levels praised the young Marine for his initiative, and the story quickly spread among the ranks. Emails were exchanged, commendations were considered, and discussions of Harper's actions became a focal point in leadership meetings. The incident, while seemingly small, had become a testament to the enduring power of integrity and respect. That evening, Harper found himself reflecting on the day's events. Alone in his quarters, he replayed the morning's interactions, the veteran's gratitude, and the general's acknowledgement. Each memory reinforced a single truth. Courage wasn't measured in grand gestures alone. It was measured in moments of quiet, deliberate choice and standing up for what is right, even when it draws attention or invites criticism. The veteran, meanwhile, reviewed his own reflections. Though he had experienced countless acts of bravery and service throughout his life, today had reminded him of the enduring spirit of the military, embodied not just in strategy and combat, but in simple acts of respect and human connection. It was a validation of everything he had believed in for decades, a reminder that honor persists across generations. By the end of the day, a sense of calm settled over the base. The hum of activity continued, but it carried a new weight, a consciousness of what leadership truly means, of how small gestures can have profound consequences. Harper's actions had demonstrated that even within the rigid structures of military life, there is room for empathy, understanding, and moral courage. As night fell, the veteran retired for the evening, his heart lightened by the experience. Corporal Harper, standing watch, felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was what service meant, protecting, guiding, and uplifting not only the nation, but also the people who had dedicated their lives to it. The lesson of the morning had been learned, internalized, and would be carried forward by everyone who had witnessed it. In the quiet moments before sleep, the veteran thought of the young Marine beside him, and a rare smile spread across his face. "They will remember," he murmured to himself. "They will carry this forward." And in that moment, a simple act in a bustling mess hall became more than a story. It became a legacy. Harper had shown that heroism is not confined to battlefields or medals. It resides in every moment where courage, respect, and humanity intersect. The following morning, the base woke to a renewed sense of purpose. The echoes of yesterday's events had not faded. In fact, they had grown stronger, permeating every corner of the facility. Marines who had observed the interactions in the mess hall walked with a subtle confidence, their heads held a little higher, their eyes sharper, their steps measured not just by discipline, but by awareness of what true leadership looks like. Corporal Harper entered the mess hall, the smell of breakfast filling the room as trays clinked and conversations resumed. Yet the atmosphere was different now. There was an unspoken reverence, a quiet acknowledgement that the events of the previous day had set a standard. Even the youngest recruits seemed to carry themselves differently, watching the older Marines carefully, observing the tone of interactions, and internalizing lessons without being told. The veteran returned, his presence now familiar and welcomed. He moved with the steady composure of someone who had seen much in life, but his eyes carried a light that had been absent before. The moment he entered, Whispers ran quietly through the hall, not in judgment, but in admiration. He was a living reminder of the past, a symbol of endurance, sacrifice, and of values that had shaped the military for generations. Harper greeted him with a nod, the silent camaraderie between them having strengthened overnight. "Good morning, sir," he said. The veteran smiled, a genuine, broad smile that reflected both gratitude and pride. "Morning, Corporal. Ready for another lesson today?" Even as they spoke, the general appeared, his presence commanding attention without the need for volume. He surveyed the mess hall, taking note of the changes. Where there had once been whispers of disapproval or judgment, there was now a subtle harmony. The Marines moved efficiently, with purpose, and yet there was a noticeable shift in how they treated one another. More respect, more awareness, and more consideration. "Corporal Harper," the general began, walking toward him, "I've been reviewing the events of yesterday, and I want to ensure that the lesson extends beyond this hall. Your actions demonstrated a principle that we must all remember. Leadership is not just about rank or orders. It is about integrity, courage, and empathy." Harper listened attentively, his posture straight, every word sinking in. He had not acted for recognition, but hearing the acknowledgement from the general reinforced the weight of his actions. "Thank you, sir," he said simply, his voice steady. The veteran interjected softly, "It's more than that, sir. What he did reminds us all that leadership is as much about protecting the dignity of those who came before us as it is about guiding those who follow. That's a lesson every Marine should carry." The general nodded. "Indeed, I will be sharing this example across other bases as well. Your actions are now a standard, Corporal Harper, a benchmark of conduct that every Marine should aspire to." As the veteran sat down, Harper returned to his duties, observing quietly. The changes in the mess hall were tangible. Conversations were respectful, smiles were genuine, and even the quieter corners of the room, previously filled with whispered judgments, now carried an air of understanding. Leadership, Harper realized, was contagious. One act of courage, one simple gesture of empathy, had influenced the behavior of dozens of Marines around him. By mid-morning, a small assembly was called. The general addressed the hall, making it clear that yesterday's events were not an isolated moment, but a lesson in moral courage and leadership. He recounted the interaction between Harper and the veteran, emphasizing the importance of empathy, respect, and initiative. Every word resonated with the Marines present, reinforcing values that had been drilled into them for months, but now had a tangible example to anchor them. The veteran listened quietly, the weight of recognition settling comfortably upon his shoulders. Though he had long left active duty, his presence had reminded everyone of the continuity of service and sacrifice. Generations, he realized, were connected not just through history, but through shared values and respect for one another. After the assembly, Harper approached the veteran. "Sir, I just want to say thank you again for trusting me yesterday and for sharing your perspective." The veteran placed a hand on Harper's shoulder, a simple gesture heavy with meaning. "No, Corporal, the thanks is mine. You reminded me of why we serve, why we endure, and why integrity must always guide our actions. You've strengthened the Corps, not just through duty, but through heart." As the day progressed, Harper continued his normal duties, but there was a noticeable shift in how other Marines interacted with him. Respect was evident, not just for his rank, but for his character. Leaders and peers alike recognized the integrity, courage, and empathy he had demonstrated. It was a subtle change, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but within the halls and routines of the base, it was transformative. The veteran, after finishing his meal and spending time observing the activity around him, slowly made his way to the exit. Harper accompanied him, as always, ensuring a safe and respectful passage. As they stepped outside, the cold air was crisp and invigorating, the sounds of the base bustling with purpose. "You've made an impact here, Corporal," the veteran said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not just for me, but for everyone who witnessed your actions. Remember this: one act of courage, one decision rooted in respect, can ripple through lives in ways we cannot predict. Today, you've changed the course of more than one career. You've changed perspectives. You've inspired. Harper absorbed the words, understanding their weight. Leadership was no longer an abstract concept. It was alive, visible in every glance, every gesture, every decision. Yesterday's moment in the mess hall had set in motion a chain reaction that would continue far beyond the walls of this facility. The general approached, joining them in the brisk morning air. "Corporal Harper," he said, his tone serious yet warm, "the standard you've set is exemplary. I trust you will continue to lead by example, inspiring not just your peers, but future generations of Marines. Today, we witnessed a rare demonstration of moral courage, a reminder that heroism is often found in the quietest of actions." Harper nodded, the enormity of the recognition settling on him. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best to uphold it." The veteran watched them both, a sense of peace washing over him. "You've reminded everyone here what it truly means to serve," he said softly. "Not just in action, but in spirit. Courage, respect, and integrity. They endure generation after generation." As the morning sunlight spilled across the base, Harper returned to his duties, the veteran to his quarters, and the general to his inspection rounds. Yet the lesson lingered in every corner, in every interaction. Marines who had once been skeptical now carried a deeper understanding of leadership. Acts of empathy and courage had become contagious, shaping behavior and instilling a renewed sense of purpose. By the end of the day, the mess hall had returned to its regular rhythm. But the echoes of the previous day and the quiet heroism demonstrated by a young Marine and an elderly veteran remained. Harper's actions had created a legacy, one that would be remembered and emulated. Leadership, they realized, was not defined by rank or orders alone, but by the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult, and the integrity to respect those who pave the way. As night fell over the base, Harper stood quietly, reflecting on the day's events. He understood that the lessons he had learned and the example he had set would resonate far beyond this place. The veteran's presence, the general's acknowledgement, and the respect of his peers had confirmed what he had always believed. True valor is not measured by accolades or recognition, but by the integrity, empathy, and courage that guides every decision. The veteran, now resting in his quarters, smiled softly. He had witnessed something rare and beautiful. A young Marine who understood the meaning of service, who embodied the values that had defined generations of soldiers, and who reminded everyone present that courage and honor are timeless. And so, in the quiet moments of reflection, the legacy of yesterday and today intertwined. A single act in a bustling mess hall had become a story of inspiration, courage, and enduring honor. A story that would be told again and again, reminding everyone that heroism often appears in the smallest gestures, and that respect, empathy, and integrity are the true markers of leadership. The message was clear. In every generation, there will be Marines who rise to the occasion, who demonstrate courage not on the battlefield alone, but in everyday acts of honor. And those moments, though quiet and often unnoticed, define the very soul of the Corps. In that small, unassuming mess hall, a young Marine, an elderly veteran, and a general had together created a timeless lesson, one that would echo far beyond their immediate surroundings, inspiring courage, respect, and integrity for years to come.